Okay, hello everyone and welcome back to World of Tanks Blitz, and today I'm going to be doing a garage review of this thing, the T-70 57, which is a tier 3 Russian light tank. Now, I missed out on getting the normal T-70 when it was removed in update 5.5, along with some other tanks that I really want now, which I never realised I should be getting before the update occurred, which meant I lost out on them for probably forever. But when this thing came around, I thought, I've never seen it before, it was cheap to get, so I missed out on the normal T-70 57, so I'll get this thing as a pseudo regular T-70, and it's a decent little light tank. It has got decent armour and stuff, as we will see, starting out 519 HP with improved assembly, which in comparison to something like the M3 Lite, which has got 500, not including improved assembly, the LTP, 480 not including improved assembly. You've got 480 for the BTSV, which again is not with improved assembly. The Panzer 3A, which has got 500 without improved assembly. If we were to take it off, come on, where is it? There we go. If we were to take off improved assembly, it would go down to 490. So it's got not too bad HP, really. It's sort of in the mid-tier / mid to high of health at this tier, which is pretty good. As for the armour, 35 frontal hull, 15 side, 25 rear, and 35 all round on the turret, which is not fantastic. However, because of the extreme sloping that's on this thing, it gives it a pretty decent effective armour, probably up to, I'd guess somewhere around 50 mil of armour, maybe a bit less, on the front of this tank. Obviously the turret itself is pretty thin, 35 mil, even though it does have this front gun mantlet, is still not fantastic. But the frontal hull can bounce things at a decent angle. If it catches you, sort of like here, it'll bounce straight off, and it's pretty decent. Obviously, side and rear is completely useless. It's nowhere near as OP for the tier as the Panzer 3 is. But everyone knows about the Panzer 3. This thing has got, fairly decent hull armour at least. 231 meters view range, etc, etc. As for mobility, 28 kilometers per hour, with a 13.4 power to weight ratio, 40 degrees of turret traverse and 48 degrees of hull traverse, with a 194 horsepower engine, which is with the engine accelerator, you take it off and it goes down to, what's that, about a 182 horsepower engine roughly. So mobility is not that great, let's be honest. If we compare it to something like the LTP here, it's got a 16.2 power to weight and 31 average speed with a similar sort of engine power. Something like the M3 Lite even, which has got decent armour, has still got a 23 horsepower per ton ratio with a far beefier engine. What's something else that's small and light like that? Is nothing really. The Locust, that's obviously going to have decent mobility, 24 horsepower per ton ratio, so really it's pretty sluggish for a light tank. It's more comparable to something like, let's have a think, the Medium 3 perhaps, which has got a 12.5 and the same average speed, and it is a medium tank, and it's a pretty large medium tank at that. Look at that compared to this. Yeah, this thing has got a very low profile, which is good. It does have decent camo, however, because of probably the weight of the gun and the shells that it's carrying, this thing really does not move very quickly at all. It is pretty sluggish in terms of getting up hills. Actual hull traverse and all that is decent enough. Again, if we compare it to something like an M3 Lite, that's got similar sort of hull and turret traverse, so its actual traversing speeds are not too bad, but actually getting up hills and stuff, it really does lag behind, which means if the battle is moving quick, and it tends to at these low tiers, if the battle is progressing quickly, or if you're caught out of position and you have to move, if there's lots of hills on it, like some of the desert maps have got a lot of rolling sand dunes, if you're on a map like that and you're stuck out of position, there's very little that you can do to really stop the oncoming enemy tanks, because they will just get up the hills far quicker than you. Which is a shame, really, because it's just too heavy of a gun to mount in a T-70, and that's really the crux of it. Because of that, it leads to not so fantastic gun stats. What do I mean by that? Well, we'll have a look here. The gun itself is a ZIS 8T. It's a standard 57mm Russian anti-tank gun, which they've just stuck into the like 1 or 2 man turret of the T-70 and just gone have at it. Because, as we know, the T-70 mounts a 45mm gun, at least the old Tech Tree one. Has got a 45mm gun. Obviously, the Russians decided they needed an upgrade to their aging T-70 during the war, so they stuck a 57mm into it, hence T-70 57. The aim time is good, 3.1 seconds, however the dispersion is absolutely terrible, 0.4 dispersion, with a 726 DPM, 7.4 second reload time. Average pen is good, 68 and 100 with APCR. Average damage is also pretty decent, 90 with AP, 70 with APCR, with 10 degrees of gun depression as well, which is good. You know, 10 degrees of gun depression is a decent gun depression to have. It's what all tanks should aim to have. However, yeah, the DPM and the accuracy, don't forget that accuracy is including refined gun. If I took it off, it'd be 0.44, which is probably worse than some of the big Russian 122s that you find on your ISs and KV3s. It's really really terrible gun, just gun handling really in general. And you know, it's pretty slow as well in terms of reload. Panzer IIIA mounting a 50mm, which this is the short-barreled 50mm, but a 50mm nonetheless, and still has better gun dispersion, slightly better aim time, but a far better reload time and DPM. And it's going to be that DPM and reload time that we're going to be looking at, because this thing has got one of the worst DPMs at this tier. Something like the Medium 3 has also got a 57mm. It's got the gun, the quickfire 8 CWT Mark 1, aka an Ordnance Quickfire 6-pounder anti-tank gun, and that has still got a 2.7 second aim time, 0.34 dispersion, with 1000 DPM and a 4 second reload time for this 57mm gun. Something like the FCM or the SU or the Marder, these have all got exactly the same, basically. They've all got 75mm guns is what I'm getting at. They reload in 12 seconds, 12 and a half seconds actually, with a worse dispersion and worse aim time, but they've still got probably better DPM as that, 865 for the FCM compared to 726. They've got a better DPM but for a far longer reload time, which does feel like an age. If you miss a shot in this thing, it's like missing a shot in the Death Star. That's how long the reload is in comparison to tanks at its tier. These things, they've all got 865 DPM, and they're slow-firing tank destroyers, which have got good alpha damage. Yeah, in comparison, you know, Panzer III, Panzer IIIA, what else has got a 57mm here? Not much, actually. Everything else has got sort of 40 or 45mm. Even the BT-7 artillery has got a 621 DPM. It's got nearly as bad DPM as the BT-7 artillery, and that thing fires nearly exclusively high explosive. In fact, it fires only high explosive, because the high explosive has actually got better AP pen than yeah, if we were to take off calibrated shells, it'd go to, if we would put on calibrated shells rather, it'd go to 42, but then we'd lose out on DPM. But even so this thing has really not got a lot of DPM for the tier. If we were to compare that to something at tier 2, tier 2, the medium 2 with its 6-pounder gun has got a 628 DPM, and it's a tier lower, where you'd expect DPM to be worse because as things go up the tiers they reload quicker. The 37mm on the Panzer 38H, the Micro Mouse, has got 645 DPM. And if you don't care about the numbers so much, I'll just give you a couple more before we stop it. Something like the Universal Carrier's got a 673 DPM. The Panzerjäger, the tier 2 Jagdtiger, has got a 794 DPM. And it's a tier 2 tank destroyer, and this thing's a tier 3 light tank. And it just has got such a terrible reload in DPM. And that's all purely due to the fact that there is one or two men inside of this cramped little turret with a big breech block of a 57mm gun. That's why it's got such DPM issues and such a long reload time, is because they're trying to manhandle these 57mm shells in a turret the size of a shoebox. It just cannot trade with enemy tanks. You have to have another teammate with you, otherwise the enemy tank will just out DPM you quite easily. But that's enough about talking about the DPM and all that. We've talked numbers enough, I think, with that. Yeah, so overall, relatively mobile, bad at going up hills, light tank, which has got decent pen and damage for the tier, but for an extremely long, terrible reload time and terrible DPM. That's the summary, really, of the tank, really. In terms of stats, as for consumables, update 5.5 obviously has changed it all, so you've only got the multi-purpose and your engine power boost, so you might as well mount both of them. They're pretty cheap for this tier, you're never really going to lose out on credits. As for ammo, you do carry 46 rounds of ammo, but unlike the Valentine 2, you don't fire these off at particularly high rates, so you can go ahead, mix and match them, and you'll never really run out of them. I carry APCR for the Panzer 3s when we get a Seal Clubber in the match, because that normally happens every match. You get at least one Seal Clubber, but in a Panzer 3 specifically. But yeah, so you can go ahead, match up the ammo as you want. You're never really going to run out in the course of a normal battle. You're going to want refined gun to get the reload time down and the DPM up, because yeah, you just want it. So yeah, you're going to want that. Calibrated shells you don't really need, you don't have high explosive, and you've got fairly decent damage anyway. Penetration at least. You're going to want improved modules for the extra track durability. You're going to want coated optics as well. Yeah, you just want it, because this can be a tank destroyer. However, it probably works better as a tank destroyer, but in a pinch it can be a light tank, so you can go camo net or you can go coated optics. Really your choice. I do tend to use this thing more as a light tank, proper light tank, than a tank destroyer, but it can work as a tank destroyer, especially because of the long reload time and the decent penetration at least. Go ahead and mount on enhanced gun lane drive. You can go supercharge, which is not a bad idea. You know, having a 3.4 second aim time is still not too bad. However, it just feels like an age when you've got 0.4 accuracy. Improved assembly for the extra HP, because as much as you might be tempted to go with enhanced armor just because of that frontal slope, for the rest of it, especially the turret, which is what people are just going to aim for, it will do nothing. So you're going to want improved assembly for the extra HP. Definitely go with engine accelerator for the extra power to weight and engine power, mostly. We don't really care about hull traverse, but definitely the power to weight and the engine power is what you're going to want with engine accelerator. Definitely refined gun, because 0.44 accuracy is terrible. This is why you can't really use it as a sniper. As much as you'd like to, because of that longer reload time, you just can't, just because of how terribly inaccurate it is. At close ranges it's not too bad, and if you let it aim it will generally go where you want. However, 0.4 accuracy is still terribly inaccurate, probably again due to having people trapped in this little turret. And then your choice of enhanced tracks or toolbox, and then your choice of those two, which don't really make a difference at this tier. So yeah, but there you go. The T-70-57, it is still a fun tank, and if you haven't got a T-70 and you want one, you can do worse than picking up the T-70-57. Just remember, it does have terrible DPM, and it does have a terrible reload time because of the tiny amount of people trapped inside of this little turret, 1 or 2 man turret. But otherwise, yeah, it's fairly decent tank. So yeah, there you go, T-70-57. I'll thank you for watching, and goodbye.